Sonic Generations, a game so nice we got it thrice. We have, in the initial release, the HD version, which, was on the modern day consoles at the time, the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360, and later that version was also ported to PC. And then there's the often forgotten 3DS version. And that was back in the year 2011. More than a decade later, they decided to remaster this game. Now, I want you to picture this. It's the year 2024. A new Sonic movie's gonna come out, and that movie's starring Shadow the Hedgehog. Shadow the Hedgehog hasn't been in any games for like a hot minute, right? So you need to, 1, find a way to capitalize on this new movie, and 2, find a way to remind players or bring new players into the understanding of what Shadow is. So, with this great remaster of Sonic Generations, they added a whole new separate campaign, Shadow Generations, leaving the full title Sonic X Shadow Generations. Be careful when Googling this, you might end up on the wrong side of the internet. Now, back when Sonic Generations came out, let it be because the brand itself wasn't as strong as it was previously and as strong as it will be later, Sonic Generations wasn't released as a full-priced game. It was released at $50 instead of the new game price at $60 for the time. Now full-price games release at $70, but that's a whole other discussion that I'm not really going to get into in this video. But to be for real, I think the game had pretty good bang for its buck. Like, sure, the game is shorter than other full-priced games at the time and even nowadays, but the replay value matters most to me. If I can actually come back to that game over and over again throughout the years, then that price is worth it. The game itself, being Sonic's 20th anniversary title, means the main focus was nostalgia-driven game design, right? Unlike newer Sonic games that also focus on nostalgic-based game design. Generations had an excuse for it, at least. After that, it just becomes more pandering and more of a, we don't know what to do, so hey, look at that pretty thing you remember. Isn't that cool? And it kind of loses its luster. But for Generations, there's an excuse, it is warranted, it works out for this game title. The story itself, for how bare bones it is just an excuse to get you into these levels. So basically, Sonic's having a birthday party. We don't really know how old he's becoming, but hey, it's his birthday party. Surprise! And suddenly, this time vortex opens up, and out comes a giant monster. It's called the Time Eater. Very cliche. But hey, out comes the Time Eater, and he sucks everybody in. And now you're in a white void, and in this white void, you see levels of Sonic's past. Now, because of timeline shenanigans, you have Sonic and Tails teaming up with Classic Sonic and Classic Tails to rewrite and fix time back to where it needs to be. Funny enough, the only way to do this is to race through these levels as fast as possible, and while you're doing that, you notice the Time Meter seems to have an adverse reaction to the Chaos Emerald, so you might need to collect those as well. And there it is, that's the basic concept of this game. From there, the story kind of takes a back seat, and it doesn't really ramp up at all until the end, I guess, where they keep the mystery on what is a Time Meter or where does it come from. It's kind of thinly veiled, but they kind of keep it up to you to guess until the end where you find out, oh boy, it's Dr. Eggman, he's controlling the whole thing, trying to rewrite history, so he wins the entire time. But then the two Sonics turn super and they win the day, returning time to its normal place. The concept overall is cool, yes, and we all know it's just an excuse for Sonic to play through these older levels he has in the past. But I will say, seeing classic Eggman and modern Eggman interacting, kinda funny, and I wish we had more of those two than we have in the final title. Actually, altogether, I wish we had more story with this game. This entire game is one paper of story, when it should be at least a 4-page paper. You know what I mean? I don't need much for this kind of title, but we have so little that it's missing on so many opportunities that I would love to see. And I know I'm not the only one that has this feeling, but we got what we got, and failures to make the most of it aside, it still was a good title. Now, breaking down the gameplay a little, right? So you had Modern Sonic, which takes a page from Sonic Unleashed and Sonic Colors, being a platformer that focuses more on reaction timing and quick reflexes. Now that's Act 2. Act 2 is always going to be Modern Sonic. Act 1 focuses purely on the 2D platforming of classic years, except it feels like a game of telephone comparing to the original classic games. Like, if I had to explain how Classic Sonic was to someone who never played Classic Sonic before, and then they designed a game around the way that was described, I believe it would turn out closer to the way it is now than how it truly was back in the day. I don't really know if this is a hot take or not, but I'm not really a fan of how Classic Sonic feels in this game, or really a fan of playing his levels past the classic era. It's a cool gimmick for sure, but I don't know, the level design never really clings to me as anything beyond slightly annoying. To select a stage, you have this overworld. The overworld is this bland white void in which all you can really do is run left and right between the levels, and that's kind of it. I feel like it would be a much more funner place to explore if we had a 3D realm to run around compared to a 2D. Now, get Classic Sonic doesn't go into 3D, so they had to keep it, 2D. But I feel like there's a missed opportunity there, right? To be able to explore and see little, Easter eggs or little, nods to Sonic's past should have been in, this little 3D space we could explore, like a little museum or something. That would have been so cool as you're going in between all these levels. Now, technically, if you go all the way to the left, right, you get this little museum section you can kind of look through, but still is a 2D, space you're exploring. And you're barely exploring. You're just going from, one little menu to another little menu. It's not much to really look at in that regard. There is a little hidden area in this museum though. If I remember right, there was a promotion they were going to do with certain toys where the toys would come with different codes. You put that code in, you'd get their little model in this little museum section, which was really cool. But weeks after the game came out, all the codes leaked and you can just find them and put them all on without having to buy any product, and I think the whole idea got scrapped afterwards. Alright, so let's really explain this overworld layout though. So you have this long straight line and you can run from left to right, blank void, yada yada, right, like I said. But the entire area is segmented by eras of Sonic. You have Classic, Adventure, and Modern. Each section will have 3 zones, 1 rival, and 1 boss. Each zone also has multiple challenges per act, so there'll be Act 1 will have 5 challenges, Act 2 will have 5 challenges, so there's a lot to do. A cool little detail though is as you complete the challenges and the zones, more color comes to these stages, so you're really putting the pieces back together and you see it aesthetically, and I kind of like that little piece of detail, Now to get to those challenges, there are a little bit of platforming areas in this realm that you have to do to get to the challenges. Later on, it gets a little bit more annoying to try to do these challenges because the platforming will require you to start from the beginning of the entire era to get to a challenge that's at the end of the era. So that's kind of annoying to navigate. I wish they were more condensed per zone instead of the way they try to do it where it kind of blends in together. Now you may have already guessed this, but if you go all the way to the right, at the very end you have this little clock themed platforming segment where you need Chaos Emeralds to get your way through. But at the end of that, there it is, the final boss, the Time Eater himself, right? And that's kind of it for the map, and the overworld as a whole. Game progression though goes like this, right? You have to play through Act 1 and Act 2 of every zone. That being said, you can choose which act to do first, but you do need to complete both. After completing both, you do get a little cutscene with the character that's standing in front of the zone. The cutscene does change depending on what act you do last, so it's up to you if you want Classic Sonic or Modern Sonic to interact with these characters. Though, all these cutscenes are usually the character saying the equivalent of "thank you for saving me," and then Sonic reacting to it without saying a single thing, and it comes off as kind of weird at times, but I don't know. You do this 3 times per era, so really 9 times in total. From there though, you go to the boss gate. The boss gate needs keys for you to open those, so you have to go back to the previous zones and do 1 challenge per zone. A little bit of padding, but it's not too bad. You do a challenge of your choice amongst the 10 options. Once again, 5 for Modern, 5 for Classic. You get the key, you can use that key now to unlock the boss gate. While looking for a challenge, you'll bump into a rival. Fight that rival to get a Chaos Emerald. Now that you've fought your rival and you got your keys, you're ready to fight the boss of the era, right? They pick a boss to represent the era of Sonic that you're in. You defeat that boss, you get another Chaos Emerald. You'll then watch a 1 to 2 minute cutscene that will, move the plot along or something. And repeat everything I said 2 more times for the Adventure Era and Modern Era. After that, you unlock the Time Eater Gate. You'll need all the 7 Chaos Emeralds like I mentioned before. You'll get another cutscene before the boss. You fight the boss, you get another cutscene at the end. Boom! That is it. That is the flow of Sonic Generations. Now, like I mentioned before, we have 3 eras. Each era has multiple zones, a rival, and a boss, right? And all of them are picked directly for that era. For the Classic Era, we got Green Hill Zone from Sonic 1. Classic, probably the best choice for the beginning of the game. It represents the beginning of the series, and yada yada yada, right? We got Chemical Plant from Sonic 2. Probably my favorite OST in this entire game, and that's saying something because this game has a fantastic OST. And then we got Sky Sanctuary for Sonic 3. I myself would have picked the Death Egg, but it does the job either way. The rival fight for this era is Metal Sonic, and the big boss for this era is the Death Egg robot from Sonic 2, except way easier than it ever was in Sonic 2. Overall, the Classic Era, I think they picked a good bunch for this time period. Everything probably best represents that timetable of Sonic, so good choices all around. There's the Adventure Era, right, which doesn't have games that are just from Sonic Adventure 1 and 2. I guess they kind of just lumped the early 3D Sonic games as the Adventure Era. I guess there is a similarity in gameplay overall, right? But I don't know if this is the best naming for it. But that aside, right? We got Speed Highway to represent Sonic Adventure. Then there's City Escape for Sonic Adventure 2, which I would say is probably the best choice to make for Sonic Adventure 2. It is the opening stage. It is the one that everybody remembers. Everybody knows City Escape, the OST. It fits very well for this kind of game. But because we just finished Radical Highway, which was a city level, I myself would have picked Final Rush. 1, because aesthetically it's very different from what we just did, and 2, because it's one of the final stages of Adventure 2, you have some higher stake platforming that you can play with, versus the more safe level design that City Escape offered as being the first, act in the entire game. That being said, the gun truck for both Act 1 and Act 2 is crazy and probably one of the best level ups you'll get in probably Sonic. That truck had a Dragon Ball Z style hyperbolic time chamber training arc, and we never got a chance to see it. That's the game I want, Sega. Give me the gun truck video game. Last but not least, the final zone picked for this era was Seaside Hill from Sonic Heroes. I myself probably would have picked Egg Fleet just because I like the aesthetic of that zone way more than Seaside Hill, but Seaside Hill is a strong enough contender. For the rival, I don't know who else they could have picked to best represent this era of Sonic, so good for them for picking the perfect choice, Shadow the Hedgehog, right? And then for the boss of this era, I again think they picked the perfect boss. It was Perfect Chaos, and I love that choice. Also, a little fan theory crafting here. When you fight Perfect Chaos, you don't have to go supersonic like Sonic had to do in the very first Sonic Adventure, right? That implies Sonic got stronger over the years, and that kind of character progression, even if it's minute or not even real and it's just fan theory and crafting, it's kind of cool. I think overall for the Adventure era of Sonic, they picked some strong choices for everything all around. I personally would have picked other choices just to keep the variety up. But in a microscope, if you're picking each zone as in the best zone to represent that game, I think they did pick the best options. On to the last era of the game, the Modern Era. We begin with Crisis City from Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Love that this game was represented. I don't really think this game fits as a modern game. I think it's more of the ending of the Adventure Era. And I don't think they picked the right zone to represent it. 1, because too many cities, I'm tired of the cities at this point. And 2, I would have picked Wave Ocean or Kingdom Valley to represent this game. Probably Kingdom Valley, because that was the game that they showed off in the demos and the pre-showing of this is Sonic 06. Look how awesome this game is back during the press reel. So probably Kingdom Valley should have been the chosen game. Odd that they picked Crisis City, maybe because they already had resources used for a city environment, so it was easier to use that zone versus making a whole new resources for any other zone in this game. I don't know. Also, I get that they didn't have as many games to pick from, so Modern Sonic, I guess this is where you're going to have to draw the line so you can have enough levels to have 3 zones for the modern era. So I get what they're doing, but I still feel like it's misplaced. The second zone in this era is Rooftop Run. I have 0 notes. They picked the perfect zone to represent this game, and I think they did a fantastic job taking this game and moving it over. It does help that this game was already a Boost era game, so you could have easily just taken that level design and moved it over, but instead they did change some factors to it, and I think they made a fantastic adaptation for this stage. Okay, here we are. I've been dreading this moment. We're now on the final zone of the game and the final zone of the modern era, Planet Wisp from Sonic Colors. First, let's start off with the pros here, right? The color palette for the zone looks spectacular, and when this game first came out, it made people clamor for an HD remake of Colors. Eventually, we did get that HD remaster, but it was more like a monkey's paw wish. Definitely need to put a pin on that subject for a later video. The stage also had a very strong beginning with really great 3D platforming all around. 10 out of 10 start. But that's what makes the fall hurt that much more. On top of that, the classic Sonic act never even gets a chance to shine. As soon as that Wisp gimmick is introduced to the zone proper, everything goes under, man. Modern Sonic gets Rocket and classic Sonic gets Spike. Spike just allows you to do a lot of puzzle platforming segments, which isn't the worst, but it's very much a pace breaker for a game that is all about moving fast. And I would say that not because Sonic can't do puzzle platforming segments, but because this entire game has been more about that speed versus puzzling. And that kind of pace break makes this stage feel very stop and go. Modern Sonic has less in the way of puzzle platforming and more the way of frustrating platforming. Now I can hear it now, this is the final zone of the game, so you know, it kinda needs to get a little bit harder as you go. Yes, this is true. But the issue isn't necessarily the difficulty of the platforming, it's the entire pace of what we now have. Because once we get to that portion of the level, we're entirely locked into a 2D camera, which again isn't bad. This game has done earlier really great bouncing between 2D and 3D, and other games in this franchise have done that 2D 3D hybrid very well. But this stage does not. 2D feels it's more about that hardcore platforming to its detriment, and that's the majority of the stage. Now all these issues it has isn't necessarily game breaking, but the issue gets magnified as soon as you realize how long the stage is. The length alone causes all these issues to build up to a point that whenever I replay this game, I'm never replaying this game from start. I'm always just kind of re-exploring these levels, and I almost never touch Planet Wisp. For a rival, we got Silver the Hedgehog. Again, we got a great choice. It's the best fight out of all the rivals, which is ironic because Sonic 06, the fight was special. I also really like the idea that all the rivals we've had were all hedgehogs. And the reason why that's important in particular is that all the other characters we had to free from this frozen time space. These rivals were already unfrozen, which implies the hedgehogs are somehow more special than the rest of the cast. Food for thought for more theorizing and all that jazz, right? The boss of this era, the Egg Dragoon from Sonic Unleashed. I think this is a great choice. The execution's a little wanting. I will say this is probably my favorite Eggman mech. This boss is more of an auto runner style boss, so basically Sonic's just running towards them and your goal is to dodge, catch up, and hit him. And that's kind of it. Kind of feels like a Sonic Unleashed daytime boss, which is fitting because this boss came from Sonic Unleashed. Though in Unleashed you fought him with the Werehog form, so I'm guessing they had to do something creative, and they decided to match it with a boss as if it came out with Sonic Unleashed. You know what? Not a bad idea. Just again, the execution's a little iffy. Your movements don't work the way you expect them to, but it's fine otherwise. And that sums it up. That's the entirety of Sonic Generations. There's nothing else to talk about. No other components. You sure? Do I have to? Okay, fine, I'll talk about the Time Eater. What a disappointing capstone to the end of this altogether great project. But before I get ahead of myself, let's start with the positives. He's a cool concept. And that's about it! Unfortunately, like everything else in this game, conceptually there's a lot of cool ideas, just all of it's left wanting, so that's barely a point in its favor. Boss fight itself, very simple in concept, you ready? You can jump between 2D and 3D, collecting rings, dodging attacks, and all you really have to do is reach him to cause damage. The biggest negative to this boss, the thing that turns this into being one of the worst bosses in all of Sonic, is the sluggish movement that makes it hard to collect those rings and dodge those attacks. It's even worse when you're trying to control Sonic in 3D, because when you're in 2D, all you have to worry about is going up and down. But in 3D, you have all the directions in the world, and when you're moving that sluggish, every second counts, and it builds up that frustration meter, man. By the end of it, I just want to blow something up. And if I have to hear one more time, it looks like a homing shot from any one of my companions in this game, I'm going to kill something. I'm going to find you, and I'm gonna rip your little animal face off. I swear! It's every second with this audio clip. And for some reason, it's every character. Why do they all have to warn me about the exact same thing? Why can't they just do the one warning and that's it? I can play, I can see in front of me, I know what's happening, guys. Please just shut up. And you know what? You can tell Sega knew this wasn't a good boss, or at least listened to the fan feedback and never approached this again. Because for the next two main Sonic Team games, the boss fight is just the Sonic Colors boss reskinned. And I'm not even joking. Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces both have the exact same style boss. Hell, Sonic Forces doesn't even try to reskin him to look different. It just is the Wisp boss. I mean, for God's sakes. Woo! I know nothing that I said there was constructive or at all useful, but sometimes you feel something so strongly in your soul, you just need to yell it out. And that's how I feel about the Time Eater. Other than that, and other gameplay elements, I guess, the most disappointing thing about this game is that it never got any kind of DLC. This game would have been perfect for a DLC that releases a whole level pack of other nostalgic old Sonic levels being remixed with that good generation style level design. But we do have mod support, so the console copy kinda stops with the base game. But if you have it on PC, the mod community is so aggressive. The Sonic community loves this game. If you can think of a level, it probably was modded into this game already. On top of that, they're making brand new levels that never existed before. All the Sonic Unleashed day stages have been modded into this game. Project Unleashed is probably my favorite mod. There is a little bit of a wet note here though. With the release of Sonic X Shadow Generations, you can't buy regular Sonic Generations standalone. You can only buy it in like a Steam pack, and all the mods only work on the base Sonic Generations. Now, with time that may change, this may be incredibly dated in like a week, and I'd be more than happy to have all of my mod collection onto the newer copy of the game and never have to download the original Sonic Generations. But as of right now, I have 2 versions of Sonic Generations installed on my computer. You know, there's another video idea. Maybe I should make a video dedicated just to Sonic Generation mods. Food for thought. Let me know what you guys think. Actually, with that in mind, I think we're running out of time for this video. In our next video, we will be tackling Sonic Generations for the 3DS, going over that game and all of its fun little specific bells and whistles. So subscribe if you want to see that video and get alerted. Hit that bell so you know when it comes out. Other than that, YouTube shilling, I guess that's all I have. So again for now, see you next time for Sonic Generations for the 3DS.